Welcome to the Dino Cinema. This is gonna be a different video for me. As you can tell, this is gonna be an unscripted one. This is not a scripted ZealotPara Stories video that goes on the ZealotPara Stories channel. I've been wanting to make this video for a few days now, ever since I started making my OC characters in Tomodachi Life. I've been thinking maybe this would be a good opportunity for me to talk about these characters and the stories they're from in a way outside of the books themselves, because it's probably going to be a long time from now before any one of my books is finished. Like, even the one that will be the simplest to complete is still going to take quite a lot of effort, because writing a book takes a lot of effort, go figure. I'm at like a crossroads between not wanting to be too perfectionist in completing this first book, but also not wanting to half-ass it, you know? Because even after a few years of writing, my writing still has a lot of flaws. Like, even just with the prose, there's still a lot. Like, I would not feel good about releasing the current draft. Like, even if this draft was finished of my current book, I wouldn't be satisfied with that being with releasing it as a book. I don't mind releasing stuff like online for free, but like selling a book with my current form of writing, I wouldn't feel good about that. And so I'm going to be, I guess, kind of explaining some of the characters and themes of my stories, but I don't necessarily want that to come across as the be-all end-all interpretation. Like, yes, I am the creator. However, I like the idea of art sort of, the idea of art coming down to the interpretations of the person receiving it. So I don't think any one person's interpretation of a work should be definitive, even the creators, because I've been noticing that a lot lately. It's been a thing that's been going on for a long time, but it's been something, a topic I've been really interested in lately, is specifically the difference between what George Lucas's vision is for Star Wars versus what a particular section of the I don't even know if I can call them the part of the fan base. They're kind of like their own weird thing. The people that are very much against the ideas of the prequels, the Star Wars prequels, the people who have this narrative, who buy into this narrative that George Lucas is an incompetent hack who only had good ideas and that the movies he made are only as good because of the people he worked with, which I don't think is true at all. I think George Lucas is a bona fide genius, but maybe I'll make that another video. So I don't really need to make that a video, to be honest. There's already so many amazing videos on that topic talking about why George Lucas is actually a really good storyteller, really good filmmaker in general. It's just that a lot of people don't buy into his vision, and that's okay. You don't have to. Like, there's people that like the first 3 movies, and they don't like the rest of the stuff that George Lucas has done. That's fine. Unfortunately, there's people that will they dislike those movies so much that they'll create a false narrative around him. But that's a topic for a whole nother time. The point is that is the extreme, the difference between, the original creator's vision and the viewer's vision, is these people that will literally create false narratives just because they dislike the person, and they dislike what he did with it. At the end of the day, the artist did what he wanted to do with it. He doesn't give a shit what people think. He just wanted to make a cool story that he was really passionate about, and that's what he set out to do. And I really respect him for that. I don't respect people that call him a talentless hack, because that is just objectively wrong. Again, you don't have to like what he made, especially in this age of AI. I highly value stuff made by real people. Obviously, real people can make bad things, can make problematic things, but I don't think George Lucas's Star Wars is one of those. Of course, those movies are not immune to critique. They do have problems. But I guess the other extreme, from the people who are overly negative towards George Lucas, I have seen the other side, and something I was kind of dipping into myself recently is maybe people that are a little too defensive, maybe not open-minded enough to the idea that, you know what, yes, the prequels are purely made in George Lucas's vision. That is what he always imagined Star Wars to be. And of course, stories evolve, like the way he imagined what the prequels would be like back when he made A New Hope. Of course that was going to evolve, because there was such a huge time gap between the films. And so, of course, his ideas were going to change. If you've ever written anything, ever written a story or anything, you know that that's just part of the creative process. It's just a natural part of it. He's not some indecisive psychopath, like people say. Like, he's not some incompetent baby. But of course, he isn't flawless either. And I think you can also go too far in the direction of defending him, being like, oh, you know, it was his vision. It doesn't matter what you think because George Lucas, this was his vision. At the end of the day, people aren't gonna like everything you do. If people don't like the direction he went in, even though that was a lot of that was kind of intended from the start anyway. Again, it did change, but you know, that's just part of it. So anyway, that was a huge rant for a very small part of this video. I want to go ahead and get into talking about my characters that are on my Tomodachi Life Island. So the first one I made is Clea. Clea is from my story called Hidden Fangs. It was actually the first story I started developing when I first got into writing a few years ago. It's my most complex in terms of world building and just with how many different stories I have within this one universe in particular, because there's Hidden Fangs. The overall series I call like the Fear of Control series. But Clea is from a book I've been writing called Hidden Fangs Return to Childhood, which is like the first in a trilogy of books that I have planned. It might also just be 2 books. I still haven't finished the first book. I kind of started on the second one, but that was just to help me know what to set up in the first book. And then there's another backstory sort of series called I've got a few names for it. D66 is one. Neo Extinction is another name for it. The story is post-apocalyptic. It's got dinosaurs. It's got aliens. It's got a lot of stuff. But the book Clea is from, Return to Childhood, she is a villager that's in this village in the middle of the well, we'll just say I'm not gonna get too deep into the actual part of it. I'm just giving you like sort of her perspective of it. All she's ever known is this little village in the middle of this, basically this forest that's in a tundra. There's mountains off in the distance that she's never been to because the villagers are confined to this village. They're not allowed to leave. If they do leave, very bad things happen to them. And let's just say that death would be the preferable way to be punished for leaving the village. As you can see here with Clea's eye patch, she has maybe been punished, not for leaving the village, if anything for being in the village, but that's a whole thing I won't get into. But where we find Clea at in her story, she very much just keeps to herself. She has a job in the village, and other than talking to like her guardians, because her parents aren't around for again reasons I won't get into, other than talking to her guardians whom she lives with, and her employer, and anyone else who is necessary for her to talk to get through her day, those are the people that she talks to. She doesn't show anything emotionally to people. She's very cut off from her emotions, partially on purpose, because she knows that in her mind that she's safer that way. Partially because of trauma that literally doesn't allow her to connect to her feelings. She's very, I'll just say she's amnesiac. I'll just say she's an amnesiac. I believe that's the right term. Again, I won't get too deep into it, but she doesn't fully understand why she is the way she is. She kind of just goes through her day and doesn't really question much. And she's 13, by the way, and she actually kind of looks like this. Obviously, that's why the me looks the way it does. Right here, I've got the only piece, well, actually, the second piece of commissioned art of Clea. This is the most accurate to what she looks like. One thing I struggled with this character early on, before I had some critics read her introduction chapter, was people saying how they really liked the deep introspection into her headspace, her being very, very much keeping to herself, being sort of standoffish, I guess, and just the absolute just like trauma and sadness of her existence being explored the way it was. They liked that aspect of it. What they didn't liked was how the character didn't really have any agency in the story. Like, she, at least early on, the parts that the critics read, didn't really make any decisions for herself. She was kind of just coasted along through the story. I personally don't really enjoy seeing characters like that. I'll be honest, it's the reason why I'm not a huge fan of the Harry Potter series. Each of those movies have their different flaws. I know Harry, he develops more agency as the story goes on, but like in the first movie especially, I don't know, it feels like he's just kind of along for the ride, and I just wasn't buying into it personally. So I'm glad people made me aware of that, because I was like, oh, I'm writing a sort of character that I'm not writing the kind of character that I want to be writing. So I've since then made the adjustments to have her make decisions that make sense, that are also influenced by her fears. Because like I said, she keeps to herself because of her fears, but then there's also a part of her that wants to change. She wants to get better. So that's both a motivation of fear and also like maybe a little slither of hope that I think we all have inside of us. So I like the idea of showing that even a character who's so deeply troubled, that even she has that like that little bit of spark in her, and that she's making these steps, these steps that they hurt, and they are really hard to do, to really get yourself going, to get set on this path. But there's a part of you that wants to believe that it's worth it. So this outsider comes into the village, and he's kind of weird because she's used to the outsiders being these horrible people, because the people that run this village, the much more technologically superior people, they kind of get off by torturing the villagers. Like it's a disturbing amount of pleasure that they derive from torturing these villagers, and the village is an experiment to them. It's just an experiment. It's just like a plaything to them. There's this one outsider that comes in. She thinks he's gonna be like that, but there's something different about him. At first, he still acts like, they call them lords, they call the outsiders lords. He still acts like the lords, in some ways, because he is, kind of a spoiler, but early on in the story you realize it's not, you know who he is. And I'm so sorry if the audio quality was horrible up until now. I forgot I had my noise machine on. So this new lord being different, she kind of sees as an opportunity for her life to change. It's a small thing. It's something that she very deeply doubts, but it's something she pursues anyway. It ends up getting her in more trouble, in some ways, but it also sets her and this character down a path of, you know, things possibly changing for her and the rest of the village. That's all I'll say on that. But Clea's story is one that is... This Return to Childhood book is one that is small, seemingly small at first, but it sort of expands into huge changes for the entire world, despite being so small in scope at first. And there's all these little connections between Hidden Fangs and Fear of Control and Neo-Extinction and all these other little tidbits in the lore. I'm not usually a world-building kind of guy, but I've really gone deep into the world-building on this series in particular. One could say it's my Middle-earth. Obviously, it's not on the same level of quality, but this is my, like, big world-building passion project. Like, there are things that happen, like, thousands of years before Clea's story that kind of influence her situation. And those events also start from small-scale events. These smaller-scale stories that are kind of seemingly self-contained at first, but again, balloon into bigger things later on. I'm coming in during the editing process to say that, despite what it might sound like, I'm actually not really a world builder guy. I'm more focused on what is happening in the immediate story, what's going on with the characters, psychology, themes, story progression, like what's going on right now, you know? I'm not really a kind of writer that likes to build a world and build a history. It's okay, but it's not really my favorite part of writing. I actually do it a lot less now than I used to. I'm way more motivated to really just get into like the heads of characters, to be honest. That's what the heart of my stories is. So that's Clea. She's someone who is she's very afraid of doing the things that intellectually know that there are things she could be doing to make her life, to enrich her life, but she more sort of is subconsciously motivated to pursue these things. And whether or not she is able to find, you know, more authentic human connection, to find people she's comfortable with, to be more comfortable in her own skin, well, I mean, that remains to be seen in the story itself. Hidden Fangs is, like I said, it's such a deeply complex story that a lot of the there's a lot of logistical stuff I need to figure out. Unlike some of my other stories, which are more like it doesn't really matter as much. In this one, I really want to make sure I get a lot of little things right, because the little things I think are what makes the story. So this one I might not ever finish my entire life because it's very deep. But we'll see. It's at the very least it's going to take a long time. You can actually read a little bit of Hidden Fangs on my website, linked in the description, and you can actually read a little bit of all of these stories on my website. Most of them, except for Gal the Ghost Princess, which we'll actually talk about next, are pretty outdated and don't necessarily reflect the current state of these stories. But if you're curious as to the general idea of these stories, you can check them out on my website. So speaking of Gal the Ghost Princess, here we have the titular character. This right here is the best art I have of her. This was some incomplete art that somebody drew. It was one of my critics drew based on her. It's not totally accurate. I actually would want the hair to be more blue. She's also missing the spirit crown on her head, and of course the clothes aren't finished. So to be honest, the Mii is actually probably the most accurate depiction of her so far. Gal the Ghost Princess is actually my most publicly developed story out of all of these, because you can actually not only read it on my website, but I have an ongoing audiobook of Gal the Ghost Princess. I at least plan on making the entire first story arc publicly available as an audiobook. I've got like 14 chapters complete that you can listen to right now on my YouTube channel. It's on my other channel, ZealotPara Stories, which is linked in the description. Gal the Ghost Princess is very much my love letter to not just like Disney princess stuff, but because that wouldn't really justify it, because Gal the Ghost Princess is quite dark. Just in general, a lot of like the animated stuff that I've watched over the years, sort of me exploring the themes from those series that I really like, while also adding my own touch to it by making it darker than most of that stuff, but also not going too hard with it to where it still has that sense of whimsy and adventure. As you can probably guess by the title, Gal the Ghost Princess, she's dead. She dies. She dies during an annual event where she basically gets to meet the ghosts of past family members and other loved ones. And there's this whole thing with the spirit crowns. They open up the door to the other world, and then these guys come, they steal the spirit crowns, and they kill Gal in the process. She maybe does something else to them in return. And basically, now that she's in the spirit world, she's trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to get back home? Because to her, death is just, it's just another, it's not permanent, because she gets to see the ghosts of her loved ones once a year. One thing she doesn't think about too deeply, but is a reality of this world, is that the spirit world it's more like a limbo world. It's not the final passing place. So you can die in the spirit world. It's like a second death. It's the final death before, eternal rest. What that looks like, I might not ever actually fully explore in this series. However, I do hint at what it's kind of like. But the spirit world is something that is well known, it's well documented, like they know what it's like. The life after that, or I guess, the eternal rest, so to speak, they don't know as much about, so it's a lot scarier. It's like it is in real life to us. We don't know what it's like, really. So to her, it's just a situation of like, okay, I can get back home. How do I do that? Ever since these bad guys attacked the Star Festival? Did I call it the Star Festival? I don't even remember. I haven't touched this story in the better part of a year. But the connection between the living world and the spirit world closes prematurely. But again, to her, that connection, there's got to be a way to reopen it, right? So that's kind of what this first story arc covers, is her trying to figure out how to do that. Whether or not she succeeds or fails, I won't confirm. You'll have to go read or listen for yourself. However, the story arc isn't finished yet. Again, I'm hoping to finish it at some point. But Gal herself and the sort of storytelling and themes are heavily inspired specifically by Elena of Avalor and Sophia the First. If you're subscribed to my ZealotPara Stories channel, you might already know how much I love those two shows, because I made a whole video on them, and many more to come. The spirit world in particular is hugely inspired by Elena of Avalor. Gal's personality is very inspired by Rapunzel from Tangled and Elena, maybe a bit of Tiana from Princess and the Frog. And the general setting of the living world where she's from, New Machoka City, I believe I called it, is inspired by New Orleans, such as from Princess and the Frog. A little bit of Texas Southern influence as well, but it also has a lot of South Dakota Native American lore in it, based on the Lakota tribe, which has also influenced the spirit world, which is crazy, by the way, because the spirit world thing was initially influenced by Elena, right? And then I thought, oh hey, wouldn't it be cool if I integrated the Northern Lights into the lore? So the Northern Lights are sort of like the gateway between the living world and the spirit world. And then I was like, oh, it'd be cool if I called them like the Star Roads. Well, turns out in Lakota culture, that's literally what they see the Northern Lights as. And I think I came up with the Star Roads name even before I realized that they also call it that in Lakota culture. So I sort of just kind of converged on that idea before I did the research into that part of their culture. It's crazy how that happened. Even now, just remembering that, like, this happened over a year ago and it's still crazy to me. So I suppose it was meant to be. But yeah, she has to go on this crazy, dangerous adventure because she talks to these people in the spirit world, like the officials there, basically, who sort of give her an opportunity. It's not a for sure thing, but she sees it as a for sure thing because she can't fathom the idea of being dead and not being in the living world with her family. So she's very attached to the idea of return, oh, we're gonna go do this and it'll be fine, Sort of her catchphrase. I actually need to make that her catchphrase here in the game, it'll be fine. But of course, early on in the story, I do emphasize that Spirit World isn't the final resting place because I want to make sure that the stakes are set that when she goes on this journey in the spirit world to go to this place where she can supposedly restore the connection to the living world, it's a dangerous journey on the way there because there's evil spirits in this world too. She has to go to the spirit wastes to restore the connection. So Gal is very high energy. She very much likes to focus on the positivity in life. She doesn't like to think too deeply about things. She's very emotionally driven, but she's very choosy with the emotions that she lets drive her, at least consciously. So the events of this story test that part of her greatly, considering she literally gets everything taken away from her, and she's trying to cope with that, and she's trying to cling on to the idea that maybe she can get all that back, and whether or not she's going to be able to, I'll let you see for yourself. And while Gal's story is going on in the spirit world, her mother, Queen Morgan, is trying to find her own way to restore the connection because she can't bear the idea of her daughter being dead. Obviously, that's a horrible thing to happen to a mother, but it specifically is bringing back trauma from past events that happened to her of losing other loved ones. So she can't fathom that happening all over again because she's never come to terms with it happening before. So she's trying to do everything she can. And while Gal is pursuing positivity and forming new connections in the spirit world in order to bring back what she lost from the living world, Morgan, who's still in the living world, is pursuing a much more violent path that is making her distant from the ones she still has with her, and she's making all new enemies. She's causing pain for other people along the way. So it's a sort of parallel story going on between the mother and daughter, and they're both pursuing different extremes in response to a very similar loss. Where Gal is much more sociable and peppy, her mother, Queen Morgan, is more aloof, more cold, more distant, and she leaves a lot of the social aspects of ruling to her husband, the king, who is a lot more like Gal, personality-wise. So this story is interesting. It's more middle of the road from in terms of like the depth of world building for me. It's not nearly as deep as Hidden Fangs, but it's not as simple as some of my other stories. I have put a lot of thought into the world building for this one, but it's not as developed, and it doesn't need to be as developed because it's not as... There is a lot of history in this world, but not nearly as much as Hidden Fangs. Like, the history I have in Hidden Fangs is fucking crazy. I'm probably never going to write another story with that much depth, to be honest, because I still haven't even finished doing it. But this one, I wanted to develop the themes and I couldn't develop these themes without getting into the history of it. I don't need to get into the history of all of my stories to do that, but for Hidden Fangs and Gao, I did need to, because the history of these stories deeply influences the characters, because, you know, some of these characters, maybe they've lived for a very long time. Maybe they're still around in the current events of the story. That actually rings true for Hidden Fangs and Gal the Ghost Princess, funny enough. So whereas Hidden Fangs is my very adult, very mature, like, it gets into, like, the darkest things that humanity is capable of. Gal the Ghost Princess, while it does get dark, it does deal with death. It can be pretty sad. There is plenty of violence in it. There is indeed bloodshed. It's not quite as willing to get as extreme as Hidden Fangs, but in my opinion, it doesn't need to be any just as thematically rich as Hidden Fangs. And Gal the Ghost Princess is also a musical. If you want to hear me being bad at singing, again, audiobook is on my other channel. That was definitely one aspect that's hugely inspired by the Disney princess stuff. I thought it'd be fun to do like my own musical series, which some of my critics, most of my critics actually don't like. They don't like how it's written as a traditional novel, but then there's these sections of the book that are musical numbers. They feel like it doesn't work well with the medium. I guess I can justify it a little bit by saying maybe it's more like an audio drama than a novel. However, if I ever did publish Gal, I probably would leave the musical numbers in, so, you know, that's just something that I want to do that not everyone's gonna like. And to be honest, I think I'm just gonna stick to my guns on that, unless I can think of a better idea at some point. But hey, it's not entirely heard of. I mean, like Tolkien, he has like songs in his books, and it's literally, those are literally just kind of like how I do it, or rather, I do it like he does, where it's just like the text becomes centered, it becomes italicized, and every once in a while you'll break in between the lyrics to say what's going on. And now we've got Greta here from Madalena, which is the book I was talking about earlier that I'm currently working on, the one that is probably not going to take as long to finish as the others, but it's still probably going to take a while anyway, because it's a book. So Greta is quite possibly the character that is the most, I would say Clea is the most, is psychologically the most like me. Greta is physically the most like me because of her chronic illness that kind of came out of nowhere in an unexplained way, especially in her world where they don't have nearly as much medical resources as we do in my world, and I'm already struggling to figure out what's going on with me. And now there's something going on with Greta. What's she doing? Oh, she's just experiencing, I've seen this before. It's a capybara stealing a switch. Normalcy has become a luxury. That's a reference to the book. So the setting is that of being inspired by like a 1920s era Italy. Greta lives in a sort of small port town on the coast, kind of away from everything, away from the larger society, the bigger cities. Greta is a carpenter. She mostly makes like trinkets. I would say she probably dabbles in like pottery as well. Maybe she makes furniture here and there. However, she's kind of lightened up on the kind of things she makes. She makes much more simplistic things ever since she came down with her disability, which at the time of the beginning of the story, she's had her disability for like a year. Prior to that, she was perfectly healthy. She built this business all on her own because she's a... this isn't really spoilers because it's stated like literally in the first chapter, but she's a very stubborn person. She specifically moved away from her family because her family doesn't agree with the way the world is politically. They live in a very tyrannical country, and while her family protests against that, Greta wants nothing to do with that. She just wants to live a nice, quiet, simple life. You know, keep her head down, just do her thing, and just do what she loves doing, you know, woodworking, making these little trinkets. So she moves out on this town to her own. She doesn't really make any friends there. She kind of just, you know, does her occupation, goes home. But again, all of this has become much harder ever since she came down with this disability. She doesn't have anyone to help her. She doesn't want anyone to help her. Even with the disability, she wants to try to do everything on her own. She refuses to go back to her family because she doesn't want to get caught up in all of that political unrest. However, that political unrest has reached her small town because Royal Navy, I'll call them. I don't really have a name for the country yet. I just recently came up with the name of the town, but the Royal Navy, we'll say, is moving into this small port town, and they kind of want to make it more integrated into the larger society. So the world is shrinking in this world, not just in that aspect, but also for the last about 30 or so years, magical creatures have essentially gone extinct. As far as Greta is concerned, they're all extinct. There used to be a world brimming with fantasy creatures, you would say, something like a Tolkien type world, but now it's more reflects our modern world, to where, as far as most people are concerned, magical creatures never existed. Some Star Wars parallels there with the sort of the Empire taking over and making the Jedi going extinct, and people, even in such a short amount of time, essentially being like, yeah, they're a myth. They're an old legend, you know, the Jedi. You know, the victors in wars and those politically in charge, you know, they're the ones, you know, unfortunately, they're the ones that shape history, and they can do that in a very small amount of time. So one night, Greta gets home from work, and she starts to continue work on this little pet project of hers. It's something that she never intends to sell, but she's making this life-size doll that is about a 1-to-1 scale. Well, I mean, 1-to-1, you know, everyone's... Yeah, everyone grows different, but it generally looks like a 9-year-old girl. But it's a project that she never really intends to sell. It's sort of just something that she wants to keep for herself, for reasons that I hint at, but for reasons that she doesn't fully understand herself. Much like some of my other characters, she is subconsciously motivated to do things for reasons that she doesn't fully understand. And that isn't to say my characters don't have agency, but just like you and me and many other great fictional characters, my characters sometimes take action and they act in the ways they do because they don't fully understand themselves. Something that I've personally experienced and what I see in other people and other fictional characters is sometimes our subconscious leads us to do things that we don't fully understand because we're just emotionally reacting to the world around us. Sometimes our subconscious is trying to help us to do good things. Sometimes our subconscious is deeply troubled and it's just acting out of fear. So we just do things, we don't get it. And when she goes to bed that night, here's a noise in her home. She goes to investigate. There's this creature, this disturbing looking creature in the dark that she can't really fully make out. It's got glowing eyes. She chases it out of her home. She locks her doors and windows. When she chased the creature out of her home, it sounded like a little girl, and something about that just made her feel a certain primal feeling, this certain feeling of like, what have I done throwing out this creature in the cold? So she goes back out there. She can't find the creature at first, but then she finds that the creature was huddled up in front of her home. Because it didn't know where to go. It didn't know where else to go. And then she realizes that this creature was that doll that she made. It had come to life. So then she thinks about, like, the state of the world, the fact that magical creatures are supposed to be extinct, the fact that the Royal Navy that are moving in, you know. Which, by the way, her house is, like, kind of on the outskirts of this town. It's close, but it's not too close. So she's thinking about the Royal Navy. She's like, this creature is not safe out here near this town. So she brings, obviously you can already tell that the creature is Madalena, but she doesn't know her name yet. She brings Madalena inside. She feeds her, starts a fire for her and everything. She's questioning Madalena. She's like, who are you, you know? She's trying to figure things out, but Greta's just convinced that this whole thing is just a dream. Greta goes to sleep, wakes up the next morning, finds that Madalena's gone. She's like, I knew it. It was just a dream. It's weird that I sleepwalked from my bed to the living room and I started a fire, but you know what? At least all of that was just a weird dream. It was a nice break from reality where my life is kind of painful and mundane, but it is what it is. And then she finds Madalena outside playing with Greta's horse. Greta brings Madalena back inside again. And then they meet the fairy, Linity Forelet, who will... Actually, I'll go ahead and show these other characters while I'm talking about them. So there's Madalena. She is a living doll. Again, about as big as a 9-year-old girl. And then we've got Linity Forelet here, who is actually about the size of your finger, maybe a little bit bigger. But obviously this was the smallest I could make her in the game. She's a fairy. She speaks with this world's equivalent of a Scottish accent. You know, I'm Fora. I'm a fairy. She calls herself Fora for short. It turns out that Linity Forelet was tasked by some unknown character that we haven't seen yet to essentially raise Madalena with Greta, and Greta's like, no, I can't do that. I live in the world of humans. I can't just take care of these two magical creatures. So the plan is for Greta to essentially, you know, pack up supplies for Madalena and Fora to move out, because she's not cold-hearted enough to turn them into the Navy to basically have them killed, but she also just, you know, she doesn't want to be seen with these magical creatures, so she's like, no, go away. And then something happens that sort of spurs her on to want to take care of Madalena and Fora personally, or at least to help them find a safer place to stay. So she goes on a journey with them to find this safer place that they've heard of. And I'm sort of vague posting at this point because I don't want to reveal too much. I've already revealed quite a bit. But Madalena is the story that I think will be the easiest to complete, because this is the one that for sure I think could be done in one book. I've actually already written a complete screenplay draft for it. I guess just like George Lucas, there, you know, there's parts where I kind of cheated and typed in, you know, and then they fought. But generally the screenplay is mostly fleshed out. It's it covers basically every single beat of the story. In the current novel draft I'm writing, there's already some rewrites I'm doing, some stuff I'm completely doing differently from that, but hey, you know, that's what happens. And a big reason I'm making this video in the first place is I'm kind of burnt out on writing at the moment, which sucks because I really want to finish this first book. I want to get it out there, I want to finish it, but I don't know, I've just kind of lost my spark for writing at the moment. I've written like 17,000 words of this draft of the novel, I've written a couple video essays, so I guess I've earned a break. It just sucks that I'm having to stop it all right now. But I'm still passionate about sharing these stories, so that's why I'm making this video. It's allowing me that outlet, because it's harder to do on stream when there's already a bunch of other stuff going on. And honestly, everything I'm doing right now, I probably could have done on stream, but I just had this idea to go ahead and go through with this particular topic tonight, and I didn't really feel like going live. And I think this would make for a good standalone video anyway. So I'm thinking about, even before I finish this first draft of the book, doing an audiobook reading of the first few chapters of Madalena, maybe like the first act, where a certain incident happens with a circus. Which, by the way, Madalena is like a loose adaptation of Pinocchio, if you couldn't tell already. It's heavily inspired by Pinocchio. I need to look into the legal logistics of that. It should be fine. I might have to change some character names, but at the end of the day, I don't think anything else is getting into legal trouble. Also, the story is so old that I don't think you need rights to Pinocchio to adapt it. I could be wrong on that, but regardless, I think there's enough original stuff in it to where it should be fine. But yeah, so like this, if I do this audiobook reading of the first act, it won't be necessarily reflective of how the final book is going to end up being, but I think it would be nice to share a decent chunk of the story before the book comes out, because I would like for this to be my first published book, because I have Gal the Ghost Princess, which is a free web series, but I would like to have a published book that you actually, you know, can get maybe even physically. So that's sort of all that stuff. I don't know if I mean, I have a lot more I could say on all of this, but I kind of just generally wanted to give an introduction to all of these stories through the Miis that I have in this game. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on all these stories in the comments, if you have anything to say on them. I guess let me know if you'd be interested to see the Madalena audiobook. That would be free. I think that would be on YouTube, but the rest of the book, it'd be cool if I could get like a proper narrator for the actual book and then have that on like Audible or whatever. I don't know what would be the best thing. I'm probably getting into being self-published, just so I don't have to deal with all that other stuff. I know that would make it harder to get the book seen, but at the same time, from what I've seen, going through an agency and stuff is a huge headache. So I think just for the sake of getting a book out there, my first book is just going to be self-published. It's basically just going to be for whoever sees it, I guess. I think YouTube is going to have to be YouTube and my streams are going to have to basically carry the advertising for this book. But I don't know when it's going to be done. I would like to finish this first draft of the novel this year. As long as I don't keep getting burnt out on writing, I could do that in like less than a month. I could easily finish this draft of the novel in less than a month. I just need to lock in, I guess. But I don't know when the book is, in general, going to be ready for publishing. I genuinely have no idea. It could be... I don't see it happening this year. Maybe next year. Maybe a couple years from now. Maybe 10 years from now. I don't know. I really don't know. But I just wanted to make this video to have some kind of outlet for these stories, because I want to keep talking about these stories. I want to keep immersing myself in these stories. It's just when I sit down to write, I'm just not feeling it right now. So I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you would like to see more videos like this, I guess. Although lately I've mostly been doing streams and reaction videos on Witch Hat Atelier. Of course, I've been streaming Tomodachi Life. And if you'd like to hear more about these stories and characters, yeah, join my streams and ask me about stuff. I'd love to talk more about these stories. I'm going to talk more about them anyway, even if you don't drop by. So take care, and although this isn't a Witch Hat video, I guess it's still fitting to say that, remember that art is magic.